Okay, so Mika
So
Smith
Mika Smith
is going to act as proxy for Patricia Chambers. Ms. Chambers cannot make the call, so she is
Okay.
on the call and she will act as proxy, so we have a quorum.
Okay. So when I call Pat's name, she'll respond.
Yes, and just,
Okay.
I'll let her know. Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith,
Okay. All right.
Patricia Chambers has asked that you act as proxy for her. She's unable to make the meeting today.
All right. I'm gonna call the
So,
meeting to order, and you can.
so
I
once you
see
come
all
back
your mics are
in,
turned off.
can you come
So
back
just
in right now?
raise your hand and let me know that you're present.
Okay, thank you. And
Mr. Crum,
when you call for Ms. Patricia, when he calls for Patricia, you just respond.
Ms. Chambers.
Okay, ma'am.
she is
Ms.
Miss Smith is logging in now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm trying to log in now. Can they hear me on your phone?
They can hear.
Can you hear
Can you hear Miss Smith on my phone?
Yes.
I'm present, and I'll join in.
Okay, can you hear
Okay,
her?
can you hear her?
I am present.
And you are,
And you are
Mika Smith.
and you're
and you're
acting
acting
as proxy
as
for
proxy
Ms.
for Miss Patricia Chambers
At Miss
at Miss Patricia Chambers
consent.
consent.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, that's- Mr. Wiley. Mr. Wiley. Mr. Ireland. Uh, Ms. McCoy. Mr. Knight. And Rufus Wells. We have a quorum. The meeting is in order. This is a special, we have two agenda items for this evening. I understand we don't have to approve the agenda since it's a special call meeting. So the two items, the first of the two items is the Citizens Park proposal. And I'd like to hear first from Mr. Brian Bower. You could turn his mic on.
Good morning. Could everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good morning. Pleasure to be here to discuss the Citizens Park proposal. From when we last met, there have been several conversations between the city as well as the homeowners association of the park area, projected park area. So at this point, I think to get to the bottom line as it relates to the proposal is that there are two aspects of this. The first one was dealing with from our viewpoint, was dealing with the basic purpose for the retention pond. And then there were one dealing with the surrounding area that we designate as the park. The funding component, as we have before you today, we are talking to the other owners. The majority of the owners at this point, we're trying to talk through the fact that there is no desire from the owner's standpoint to maintain the maintenance component after the park is created. So therefore, we're having a discussion with the city about, okay, if they could be responsible for the maintenance aspect, of the park. Because, we, as it relates to the fundraising component, we've outlined our sources for that, being that the 250 as well as sponsorships and monies that are partnering with nearby entities for the Walk of Fame with Trulitt Studios. But that's the part that, from an owner's standpoint, that they do not want to incur no additional expenses as it relates after the park is created in the maintenance. But they're on this call that they are in favor of Citizens Park. And I want to yield to Mr. Patel.
Very good. Mr. Patel? You could unmute. Mr. Patel?
Sorry, I forgot to turn the microphone on.
Okay.
So I'm not opposing Citizen Park. I'm for it. I mean, Citizen Park is good idea. I put my concern through the email as we had talked yesterday. These are the few things we want as an owner point of view not to occur on our expense for the future. But yeah, I am for the park. We don't have a problem. So yes, park is good.
Very good. You also have listed a Mr. Hutchinson to address the remediation. Is Mr. or is it Mrs. Jamie Hutchinson?
Jamie. Yes, good morning, everyone.
You may have to turn your mic down a little bit.
Yeah, hold on one second. Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Right now, the condition of the park has been.
We're getting some feedback.
Christiana, can you give the condition of the park till I can get this technical situation cleared? I think it's cleared now. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
My phone was a little bit too close to my computer. My apologies. The condition of the park now, as the city know, it has been cleaned out, which was paid by the POA and taken care of. Vegetation and everything have been removed. So now we at the stage of the beautification of the park. That will, we still trying to get a clarity from the city if they're going to approve it for a detention or a retention. We are requesting that it be able to hold a certain amount of water in order for the beautification and the water elements. I'm not for certain if the city have given a final approval for
No,
the
they have not.
retention.
Okay. Any additional comments? I think we also have listed as a speaker, Mr. Phillips, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Just wanted to touch on a couple of basic things, and my apologies, I was a couple of minutes late joining due to a prior obligation. One as relates to the enforcement issues on the detention pond. There is at least a couple of, pardon me, train going by. Sorry about that. There are a couple of remaining issues with the compliance of the detention pond. Specifically, if you'll bear with me one moment, those include that the lower orifice is blocked, causing the pond to hold approximately 4 feet of water. As it's currently designed, it is a detention pond, which means it should not hold water. It should drain within 72 hours of a rain event. Pardon me?
No, sir.
No, sir. Yes. Yes.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything. Yeah.
Okay. So that issue is still outstanding. I know that we had a conversation with Munir and Vapul yesterday, and so I know that they are, at least are aware of that. I'm assuming, Brian, you are as well. I know this email went out yesterday, so the lower orifice is still requiring some work. And then there is a fencing requirement as well. And so those two things are attainable, but are still outstanding to fully comply or bring the pond into full compliance. So as it relates to that, those two issues would need to be resolved, and then we would do a final inspection, and that would bring the pond into compliance once those two things are completed. As it relates to the redesign of the pond, that would require a full set of plans. It would require another hydrology study. It would require, in essence, a full submission to our Public Works Department and the Director, Lester Thompson. It is attainable. It can be done, but there are several boxes that need to be checked in that process in order for that to move forward. And so in answer to that particular issue as it relates to the conversion of the detention pond into a retention pond, that is a development issue that would follow the same path of any other development issue. And in our conversation yesterday afternoon with Brian, we kind of shared that he could have, I'm assuming that would be Jamie Hutchinson or whomever, coordinate with Lester Thompson to do what, for lack of a better term, we would call a formal submission, to submit the documents that would be required from an engineering perspective, from a hydrology perspective, so that that process to convert it to a retention pond could be considered and go through the standard development process that would be required of any development project. And so that's where that stands. Earlier, I think Mr. Patel referenced that they are in support of the project, was a positive and great to hear. He sent an email, I believe, earlier this morning, kind of listing some of the conditions that the ownership group wanted to ensure. And so I'm not sure where all of those, I think there are 8 different conditions that he included in there. One of them was whether or not the city had made a commitment to take over the park upon completion. As of this conversation, the city has not made that commitment. It has been mentioned several times, but I want to be clear that at this point, the city has not made any commitment to take over Citizens Park. Could that be a future consideration? That's at least possible. But I know that's one of the 8 conditions that were listed in Mr. Patel's email. As it relates to the remaining 7, things like ownership, trash and the maintenance and the cost, I don't have answers to that. And that's something that the ownership group as a whole would need to have that discussion to ensure that whatever expectations they as a group have, that's a discussion they would need to have because we would not be able to address those 8 things specifically. And I know everyone may not have seen that email. I think everyone in the ownership group got that email, but it did list a number of considerations and or conditions that they wanted to ensure were taken into consideration as the Citizens Park concept moves forward. Mr. Chair, I'll pause there unless there are any questions.
Are there any questions from any of the board members?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, one last thing, and I think we've kind of checked that box in this hearing today. I want to ensure that moving forward, as we continue to work with the Citizens Park project, as we look at the detention pond, and I kind of shared this with Brian and with our staff as yesterday, I think it's vitally important that we always kind of address the group as a whole, that all the legal stakeholders in the pond need to be in the conversation, need to be receiving the same notices, having the same opportunities to participate. I just want to make sure that our communication is consistent with all the legal stakeholders in both the pond and the surrounding area. And so moving forward, the city staff and I are going to be very intentional about ensuring that anything we do from a communication standpoint goes to that ownership group as a whole, that we'll communicate to them as a group so that everyone can get the same information and have the same opportunity to participate in the process. And with that, I'll pause, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any questions? Board members? Okay, I don't,
Mr. Wells, excuse me. I think one of the HOA members had a question, Mr.
Okay.
Manir.
very good.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Munir. I'm the owner of the Taco Bell. I think I made it very clear to Tony yesterday, by the way, hi, Tony, that, sometimes I think what Citizens Park wants and what the city wants as far as compliance don't necessarily go hand in hand. So at this stage, if the objective is to make it from a detention to a retention pond, then why are we going through part of the compliance processes that we've been told to go through? Because we don't want to spend money for no reason. So I think we need to figure out I believe the most important thing is to stay in compliance. But at the end of the day, if it means that staying in compliance is not going to work with the long-term objective of Citizens Park, there's a dichotomy. I don't understand that. So would somebody explain that to me, please?
Yes, I can explain it to you. This is Brian Bower.
Okay.
Yes. It's a pleasure meeting you on this meeting. I've been mainly dealing with Mr. Patel as it relates to the Citizen Park concept. This has been forthcoming for 4 years under the previous mayor, as well as upon arrival of the current mayor and several county council persons. So this is not something just new and popped up as just a genius idea. That was part of the concept of not having no parks in the immediate area where we have such a high volume of citizens as well as customers visiting our establishments. The partnership that we were discussing, in which the current mayor as well as commissioners are fully aware of, we have been engaged with Trulit, the studio movies industry, as it relates to the concept around the park area. So if this is not in line with the city, as Tony, if you're saying that your understanding is the concept is not in line with the city's objective. This have not officially been brought before.
I'm sorry. That wasn't my statement, but I'll allow you to.
No. I'm trying to understand, Mr. The Taco Bell owner, gentleman.
So let me see if I can add some clarity, because he and I had this discussion yesterday.
Okay, go ahead, Tony.
I think I can add some clarity here.
Go ahead.
So we had this discussion yesterday. We have two simultaneous things taking place. One is the city's enforcement action to ensure that the pond as it exists today is compliant with city ordinances. That enforcement action is solely based on the current design of the pond. Its current design is as a detention pond, which by engineering design is set up so that it drains completely of water within, I believe the time frame is 72 hours after a rain event. So in detention ponds, they're not designed to hold water. So the compliance and the work that Mr. Patel and Mr. Munir and others have done is to address the enforcement action that the city took and to bring the current detention pond into compliance. That's circumstance one, right? The proposal or the concept or the desire by one or more owners to convert the detention pond into a retention pond is prospective. That's not a done deal. It's a plan, it's a desire, it's part of what they would like to have happen with the Citizens Park concept. but that's wholly separate and apart from the work that's currently being done to bring the pond into compliance. And though they may be on parallel tracks, they both center on the pond, they're separate and distinct things. And so, as to your point, Munir, the money that you and your other co-owners have invested was to gain compliance in the current detention pond. Any future considerations would be up to the group of owners to redesign it, to turn it into something that's more in line with the Citizens Park concept. That is a separate effort, even though it's in the same detention pond or same. It's probably better to call it a stormwater feature. That's really what a detention pond or a retention pond is. Even though it's in the same stormwater facility, the design of it is an optional choice that the owners can make, but under current ordinance in the city would not be required to make, right? So that's just a development design option. And again, if that is the consensus of the owners that they want to undertake that design change, then the process I mentioned earlier of submitting information to the Public Works Department would allow that process to move forward. But I just wanted to provide some clarity. We talked about that some yesterday, I know, Munir, when we were talking, but they are two separate things.
You know,
So you bring up a good point, and I'm going to be very succinct about this. The point is that we want to be in compliance first and foremost. Okay, if we're going to spend a few $1,000s putting up a chain link fence, okay, and we have to rip it out in another, I don't know, 6 months or so because of a beautification project. Because at this point, I'm going to try to be in compliance.
Well,
It's just wasted, but I see your point. Tony. I see your point.
well,
When
one
they-
at a time,
when they-
please. Yeah.
a chain link fence
fine.
was not even on the agenda. It had not even been part until today. When the official letter came out about what was required, it did not have a requirement of a chain link fence. It did not have the requirement of the when it came down to the discussions. And I don't want to mix the two together. The enforcement aspect of a detention or retention pond or what it's going to be is totally different from the concept of Citizens Park, which is the area surrounding it. And that is what we are here to discuss today, the concept of Citizens Park that's surrounding the retention pond.
Yes.
So I am, this dialogue going deep into a retention, detention in comparison to the whole concept of the park is I don't quite understand. We're asking basically this committee, this board, development board, authority to consider and approve the funding that go towards Citizens Park concept that have been, that the offers or the donors intended for it to go, which he stated during the meeting, that was his purpose. Now, we do not in this area have no green area. This is something that could immediately happen and have an impact in the immediate community. I am just baffled of the pushback, and I'm just trying to understand, and it's not from no one on this board. Believe me, those comments are not directly towards you guys, because you all have been very cooperative. You've been very supportive, even allowing to have a special meeting to consider and approve this, is beyond your call, and we greatly appreciate that. But the concept that we're talking does not include a retention or detention. Only the elements that's added, if either one could have some element in it. So it's not a factor in regards to holistically what we're speaking about.
Okay. Can I
So-
just say that I don't believe that we have a full deck of cards in terms of a proposal, in terms of impacts. And I know that we're here to discuss the park, but there's other issues surrounding, supporting a park, like who's going to pay the ongoing maintenance, security of the park. the full
Well, Mr.
concept of the park, I think, has to be flushed out. And in my
Mr.
opinion, at this point, there's just not, I don't think that we have all the cards that we need to say, we support the park. Um, do we support the park in concept? I think personally I could say in concept we support the park, but there are other issues surrounding the park that we need to understand before we throw our full-throated support behind it. Okay, and we're not saying no, we're just saying that, you know, we're playing a game with a half a deck of cards, and in order to make an informed decision from the board to fully support you, we need to have, you know, a consolidated plan that has all the boxes checked. Okay, and I'm not saying do it. I'm saying we need a plan, to see a plan and not just pictures, because if I give you a Rolls Royce, yeah, that sounds like a good idea until you figure out.
Well, Mr. Wells, Mr. Chairman, I sort of disagree with you. We have a plan. We have studied. We have a whole project management team that have come up with the concept. They have subcontractors. They have the budgets. They've been working on this for the last 8 months, and they have presented it. So you're when it comes down to you stating that, you know, you're missing. Only thing that we're getting confused about is a retention pond element in comparison with the entire pond, the entire park concept. And you getting diving into the weeds of a retention pond that really does not have anything to do with this board. And the manager, and the city manager, which we had a discussion yesterday, do understand that concept as it relates to there's two dynamics from two enforcement aspects. I mean, I don't quite understand, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Phillips?
Let me see if I can add some clarity. The way we got to a retention pond discussion this morning is because Jamie Hutchinson brought that up. So that's how we got here. Secondly, the city's position has always been that a park in the 74 corridor is a positive asset for the city. The city's position on that has not changed. But to the chairman's earlier point, we just want to ensure full transparency, that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. So as this moves forward, everyone is in consensus and understanding exactly what this will be and what the obligations attendant to this project will be. Mr. Patel sent an email at 8:48 this morning that said that the owners were in support of the city park concept around the detention pond as long as certain conditions are met. That's the exact language of his email. I am not in a position to ensure those conditions are met. I don't know that in this conversation anyone is. And so to move forward, and some of those 8 conditions that Mr. Patel emailed this morning may or may not be met, that may impact the owner's position on this project. So I'm not at all opposing this. The city's not opposing this, but the details matter. And so we may need, and I like your analogy, Mr. Chair, a full deck of cards here, so that I want to ensure that certainly the city, but I want to ensure that all of the owners are abundantly clear on what this will be, not only in concept, but the obligations, because they are the legal property owners. There's one of those conditions talked about the maintenance of the park, the trash that may come from the park, what happens if the detention pond floods. All of those things, as it exists today, would be on the property owners. And so, again, this is not opposition, but I am fully committed to full transparency so that everyone walks away from wherever we end up saying, I was clear, I understood exactly how we were moving forward. So that's our effort, is to ensure that everybody is on the same page, and that particularly the property owners understand exactly what their role and responsibility will be as this moves forward.
And that was my whole point, is that I don't think that we're in a position, we don't have, you know, like I said before, a full deck of cards, so that we can make an informed decision, you know? I mean, it's one thing to make an emotional
Mr.
decision, but, you know, if
Mr.
all the
Chairman,
boxes aren't checked, excuse me,
Mr. Chairman,
if all the boxes aren't checked, then that means that something could happen down the road that we didn't consider, okay, that could have a negative impact on the city. Yes, sir, Mr. Bowler.
are you saying, Mr. Chair, only thing, my understanding for this meeting is for the request for funding to go towards the project. Is this board responsible for approving the project to happen?
We're
No,
responsible
Mr. Chair, if
for-
I may,
Yes,
I think we need to hear from the attorney.
okay.
Dan, could you weigh in as to this funding question and the $250,000 and what options the board has in front of it to consider today?
I'd be very happy to, Mr. City Administrator, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to do that. First of all, I'm in complete agreement with what you have said and what the chair has said.
Of course.
In terms of our options, we have all options. As was discussed at the meeting where this was presented in person, the Development Authority is in possession of some funds which was accompanied by a non-binding letter of intent that had deficiencies in it. So our options include doing nothing, returning the money, assisting the city with any public park, or going back and asking to have changes made in that letter of intent to accommodate some other program, some other project like the one that we're talking about. But if the board were to have a motion in front of it to approve disbursing this money now with all of the open issues in front of the board, my advice to the board would be do not approve it. So I don't think we're prepared to do that from a legal perspective. I don't.
And I think from a functional perspective, we're not, as a board, prepared to, take that step at this point in time, because there'd have to be some internal, discussions between board members on, some of the issues surrounding the funding even. We don't know how the flow of funds is going to go. We don't know if we're really authorized to fund this project. Okay, so that's why I'm saying there's a lot of things that are up in the air that need to be addressed before we can make an informed decision. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that I'm for or against or anything. I mean, conceptually, I think it's a good concept. Okay, but now let's drill down to what's the means and extremes of that concept? What's it going to cost us? In the short term and the long term. Site control. We don't have site control, so that means that it's on the property owners association. It is the property owners association moved to give, site control, if that's what's required, over to another entity. These are open questions that need to be answered.
This is Jamie Hutchison. Chairman, could I speak for a moment?
Sure, Jamie, please proceed.
Just a couple of suggestions from the development standpoint. Usually working with cities and counties, in which I do, if the city of Fairburn can give us that checkbox that Mr. Phillips was talking about earlier to get that side of the aspects satisfied for the board in the city of Fairburn, we're definitely willing to look at that. On our side, all our chips are in a row, but we know we have to come into this marriage with the city, so to make sure that we're in compliance with the city and what the city concerns and requirements are. Is there any way we can get something in writing and we can start working on that checkbox to make sure that all the questions and concerns are answered and that we are in compliance with the city, where there's a detention, retention, the pond, the beautification. And then I think at that point, we all can get on the same page. Me and my assistants, we're willing to work on that. If we can just get something in writing, where we can all make sure that it's a comfortability on every level of concern.
Mr. Phillips?
From the city's perspective, Absolutely, Jamie. We can provide that information. We had a conversation, a meeting yesterday that Brian was in that you weren't able to be a part of, where I pretty much explained that Lester Thompson is the Director of Public Works and Community Development. The two of you need to correct directly. We can get you his contact information. He is the director that manages that process, and he can walk you step by step through what would be required as a submission in order for them to begin the review process. I want to be very clear about something. I stated this previously, but I want to make sure this is heard by everyone. The city is not taking a position in opposition to Citizens Park. I want to state that clearly so that that is not misunderstood in the aftermath of this meeting. We do development projects on a regular basis, and it is commonplace that there are a number of meetings and other meetings, and it's a process from beginning to end. We are still, from the city's perspective, in process because of the unanswered issues and questions that we've discussed. So we're not in opposition. A park in that area of the city would be an asset to the city. We'd like to see how this could move forward. We're simply saying that there's other information that needs to be confirmed as we move this forward. Among those being the questions about the ownership responsibility as we move forward. I would suggest that we seek to have at least an initial meeting after this morning's meeting with the group of owners to get into some of the nuts and bolts details of what the Citizens Park obligation would be, so that they can all ask questions and be clear on where that moves. I also think that we need some subsequent conversations based on what Dan McCray, our attorney, just shared about the best way to move forward with this $250,000. Dan laid out at least 3 options in his comments earlier, and we need to figure out which one of those is the best option to move this project forward. Whether, and again, those are all open questions that today I certainly don't have the answer to. So I don't think the issue is that this can't move forward. To the chairman's earlier point, we just need more information. And in all transparency, this is very normal for development projects, that it goes through several iterations, a number of different meetings, so that hopefully we work towards a consensus and a plan that can be approved by the city from a development perspective, as well as addressing the issues Dan enumerated as to how we move forward with the funding.
Okay, with having said that, I'd like to, table this until we do have more information and the city and the developers have met and have more agreement on some of the ancillary issues that are coming up. Okay, so can I have a motion from one of the board members to table this?
Excuse me, Chair. Mr. Ireland is on the call and has been on the call, one of our board members. He apologizes for the technical difficulties and advises. He has one question: is there a deadline for the DDA, the Development Authority, to make a decision whether the motion has to be made? His recommendation is, to your point, to stay the decision for today. So I guess he would be entering a motion as well.
Very good.
Dan, can you address the deadline question?
I don't recall that there was any deadline in the letter of intent, and the letter of intent was non-binding anyway, so I don't think there is a deadline.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Chairman, I just had one other question. I just want to make sure I'm clear. With the city of Fairburn and the violation that was put on the POA, is that have been corrected and accepted? We don't have to revisit anything as far as the current condition and the cleanup of it?
So no, and Jamie, I'll forward to you the email that went to all of the property owners yesterday afternoon at 6:04 p.m. There are 2 outstanding issues. The lower orifice is blocked, causing the pond to hold approximately 4 feet of water. And so that means it's not working as designed. And the second one is the reference in the city's ordinance that 100 maximum water surface depth is equal to greater. I won't read all the details, but there's a chain link fence reference in the ordinance. So those are the last 2 issues that remain. And once those 2 are completed, then the pond will be in compliance. And so we can certainly share that email with you. I know that it went to Brian and all the other property owners on yesterday evening, but I'll try to forward that to you momentarily. And lastly, what I'd like to add is that Sylvia Abernathy from our side is going to reach out and see if we can't convene a meeting of all the property owners to work through some of these open questions. And it's important, and I think I mentioned this earlier from the city's perspective, that it is a group effort, that we get everyone into the conversation so that everyone can weigh in with whatever their ownership perspective is, and that we come out of that, hopefully, with a consensus. I think that would allow us to come back to the Development Authority with a lot of those answers already baked in, and then determine how best to move forward. So Ms. Abernathy will reach out to all of the property owners. We'll find a consensus time that works. I know these are very busy people, but we'll do our best to work around schedules and see if we can't get everybody into a single conversation. I think that would serve us best moving forward.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brian Bower. I just first want to thank you and thank your team for the efforts of even focusing on this. I apologize for my passion for this project. It's just been,
I
part of the
understand.
it's just been part of the condition of when I built the place here in Fairburn, and it sometimes come across the wrong way, but I really appreciate what you guys are doing in helping us go through the process of making this a successful event.
Let me just say that no need to apologize. I've been in your seat. I understand when you're involved and you rolled your sleeves up and gotten involved in a project. You want it to happen like yesterday. and trust me, I own the restaurant. You want it to happen yesterday. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with government, yesterday is not an option with government. We have to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, because at some point in time, somebody's going to say, why did they do that? That was a dumb decision to do A, B, or C, or it was a genius decision to do A, B, or C. And in government, you have to document what you're doing, particularly because it's not your money. It's not my money, and they put us here to review. And on the other hand, your business is a citizen of the city of Fairburn, so we have to address your concerns. And if there's something that we can do to enhance your business, by all means, if it makes sense from the city side, we're going to do it. Okay, but we have to make sure that we do the due diligence that's required. So your passion, I appreciate your passion. Okay, and keep that fire. Okay. Attorney McCray, is it appropriate at this time to table this issue and for the day?
And I believe I'm not sure I heard a motion to do that.
No, I haven't heard a motion, but I'm saying it's appropriate to seek a motion to table it to the next meeting. Can I have a motion from one of our members to table this?
I'll make a motion to table it.
Okay, and state your, I'm sorry.
Letitia McCoy.
Letitia McCoy has put the motion on the table to table. Can I have a second?
Chris Wiley, second.
Okay, all the motions to tables on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, abstentions? Ayes have it. This agenda item is tabled until we hear back from the city, or Ms. Abernathy is in a position to, have it put back on the agenda. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody that showed up for agenda item Citizens Park proposal. The next agenda item is the ground lease for the education campus expansion development. Okay, and Ms. Abernathy, would you like to give an explanation of where we're going with the lease?
Yes, sir. The city issued, well, let me go back a little bit. The city of Fairburn updated its 2021 LCI Downtown Master Plan in December of 2021 in conjunction with the Atlanta Regional Commission. In that document, catalytic sites were identified for residential housing, parking, and commercial retail within the downtown historic commercial district. A part of those catalytic sites was the education campus expansion. That development was identified for mixed uses and represents a comprehensive approach, which includes extensive public comments by the public, as well as priorities as identified by elected officials, our mayor, and city council, and administration. In August of this year, August of 2023, the city issued a request for qualifications of developers who would be interested in developing the site. Respondents provided proposals for that development. Successful respondents were identified, and out of those respondents, the city selected 2 developers who were selected for a joint venture to develop this catalytic site. We have had a series of meetings. Let me just say this. The RFQ closed on September 22nd, and since that time, we've had monthly meetings with the development team for the city of Fairburn to flush out renderings and master plan for the development site, which has come or culminated into a selection process. We're at the point of assignment. In order to do the initial phase of infrastructure development and financing, we will need to have a decision made on the option to develop the actual property, which is defined, in a ground lease for the education campus. The ground lease agreement would allow for the developer to develop the property while the property would remain in ownership with the development authority. Mr. Phillips, did I miss anything?
No, thank you, Ms. Abernathy. You did a good job in setting the context for this. The LCI Downtown Master Plan was developed in concert with the Atlanta Regional Commission and completed in 2021. So it's been the roadmap, if you will, for Fairburn's downtown development goals for the last going on 4 years now. And so this is moving forward with putting into place the things that plan established in 2021. There has been a significant development discussion thus far. We think that this project has a significant amount of potential. And so we would like to continue to move that process forward. And this ground lease, while it retains ownership with the development authority, allows the developers to move forward into the next stage of the development process for this mixed-use development.
Okay. As I understand it, in order to approve this the motion to approve this ground lease, the ground lease has to be read into the meeting.
Yeah, and also the developer, Mr. Chairman, is on the phone if the board has any questions for him. Mr. Edric Harris of Prestwick is one of the developers.
Is Mr. Harris, is it?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Harris, do you have any comments you'd like to make before I read it in? You have to unmute yourself, sir.
All right, sorry about that.
That's better.
Good morning. Just Edric Harris with Prestwick Development Company, representing, I guess, the JV team of Prestwick and Radiant. So Mr. Phillips, thanks for the opportunity to be here, staff and board and development authority. Really don't have anything else to add unless there's any questions. Thank you all.
Any board members have any questions of Mr. Harris? Okay, seeing none. I have a dental issue, so my pronunciation of some of the words may be a little faulty, but I'm going to give it a go.
Chairman,
Okay.
if I may, can I
Yes.
offer a few legal? There's hardly anything that doesn't require some legal comment.
Okay.
So I've been familiar with this project ever since yesterday, when I got documents from Sylvia. And I've read them, and it looks like a great project. The RFQ is professionally done. Prestwick is a well-known, reputable developer, and we've worked with their council before on projects like this. And it's exactly as the city administrator says, that in order to get the financing that's needed for a project like this, if the equity is coming from low-income housing tax credit, the 9% credit, which is competitive and hard to get, but if you get it, it provides all the equity that you need for the project.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good deal. And it's two things. The developer needs control of the site, which this would provide, and this, because it's nominal ground rent, so it's a ground lease of the site, it represents city support, which is also supportive of the developer's application. So all of that is good, and no legal objections from it or for it. But I would like to have the opportunity to review in detail, and I think make some edits to the form of the ground lease option agreement that's in front of you. It's not a ground lease, it's an option for the developer to have us, the development authority, enter into a ground lease with the developer. This is a couple of pages. A ground lease is 40, 50 pages, maybe sometimes. So that's coming, but it's not going to come until and unless the developer is awarded the credit. As I say, these are competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So my suggestion would be that board go ahead and approve what's in front of you. It's not necessary to read it, as long as the board members have copies of it and it's referenced in the approving resolution. You can just stick a copy in the minute book. You really need to do that, but you don't have to read it. And if you wanted to read the entire ground lease, let me know when you're ready to read that 50-page document into the minutes. I'll be sure to bring refreshments for us.
Okay. All right.
All righty. So if it meets the board's pleasure, the resolution would be to approve the ground lease option agreement in the form presented to the board, subject to changes approved by the chair in consultation with council. And for your information, we'll have to get that done and circulated to the chair and secretary to sign so the developer can meet his deadline. This does have a deadline of the 17th of May, which is the cutoff date for DCA to get the package. And we'd want to do it sooner than that, but that is the deadline. So that's my recommendation.
Okay. Does it require a meeting prior to, or is this meeting sufficient to cover the 17th?
If the board approves in advance changes that the chair agrees to in consultation with council, it's not necessary for the board to meet again.
Superb. Very good. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the ground lease. Could you repeat that again so that one of the members could make that motion?
A motion to approve the ground lease option agreement in the form presented to the board, subject to changes agreed to by the chair in consultation with council.
Okay, can I have a board member to make that motion?
Motion, Chris Wiley.
And second?
Second, Letitia McCoy.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion that's on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Ayes have it. I'm
Thank you,
sorry,
Board
were
Member.
there any abstentions? Okay, ayes have it.
Mr. Ireland said yes in the chat.
Okay, so there were no, ayes have it. Okay, very good. Motion passes. I guess we're now at that point where I'll accept the motion to adjourn because we've talked about everything that we can talk about, right? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion, Chris Wiley.
Mr. Wiley, seconded.
Second, Letitia McCoy.
Letitia, Ms. McCoy. All in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I guess this meeting is over with.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
Thank
Thank you, everyone.
Right, and have a
Have a good
blessed day.